Welcome to 45 Forward. I'm your host, Ron Roel. On today's show, I'm pleased to have as my guest Mary Keating, the author of an extraordinary memoir called Recalibrating Gravity. After a car accident at the age of 15 left her a paraplegic, now more than 50 years later, Mary Keating is an independent lawyer, a passionate advocate for people with disabilities, and an awarded poet. Her memoir, in fact, is written in verse in the form of 88 poems. Recalibrating Gravity is a vivid account of what life is like living in a complicated, fast moving world, not so much designed for people with disabilities. She talks with bracing honesty about the practical daily challenges of navigating this world, the barriers of public systems and structures, and the deeply personal challenges of identity, independence, and loneliness, but also how to live well, even in the messiest parts of life. Mary's story is not one of disabled people as poor victims, nor heroic inspirations. Rather, it is a reminder that disability is an integral part of what makes us human, and that caregiving is not just how we care for individuals, but how we care for each other as a society. So now let's meet my guest, Mary Keating. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ron. Welcome. I really liked your introduction.
Oh,
Thank you
great,
so
great,
much.
great. So Mary, I've been covering caregiving issues for a while, and it's mainly been caring for older loved ones, your parents and other relatives. But also, increasingly you notice that a lot of the agencies and experts I deal with talk about caring for older people and those with disabilities. Although, as you well know, it sometimes seems that the disabilities part gets put to the side. And although, to be fair to seniors too, they feel the same, that they're often marginalized and sometimes invisible. So I first learned about about issues for people with disabilities, like a lot of people in my profession, when I was a reporter and I covered the um, uh, issues in the workplace, and so one of my major pieces in 1990 was the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I learned a lot about it then. Okay, but a lot of it still over the years remains conceptual until you see some lived experiences. And so, several months ago, actually, I got just a glimpse of what it was like, and that is that I was working in Manhattan, commuting from Long Island, and it seemed like a fairly seamless commute. I'd walk to the train station, jump on the train, get off at the stop, get on the subway, get up to walk to the destination in Midtown. Until one day, I'm running for the train, and my left foot goes halfway off the curb, and I turn my ankle, and I'm hobbling and hobbling, and I'm like, oh my god, how am I gonna, and it's just really painful. And so, but I did it. But what I realized, thinking that, New York City, oh, public transit, really accommodating for the public, it's like, not so much. The accessibility is awful. I mean, getting from the train to the subway, up the stairs, it, it, so it really opened my eyes about just how inaccessible we still are. So I'm really delighted to have you on the show to sort of, really take us through the lived experience and really bring a lot more insight into this issue. And my audience is for older people, but also for people of every age, um, because as your life points out, disability can happen at any moment. So, yeah. So let's take the audience back to you know, that moment when you were 15.
Sure. But one thing you mentioned about the ADA, its birthday was yesterday. So it was a very exciting day. And this is Disability Pride Month, which is great. So, and though we are getting not such great news from the Justice Department, they're not supporting integration anymore. They've taken a complete U-turn. And that's something that I think every American should speak out against, because 1 in 4 people have a disability. I mean, it's time to really embrace that we need to be more accessible and but everyone lived their lives. So I was 15. I was a very active child or teenager. I was always with my boyfriend riding bikes. And the middle child of five, lived in a big old colonial. We go everywhere. And I was at a party, got into a car with somebody who shouldn't have been driving, and he drove us into a tree at maximum speed, which was very frightening. And I woke up on the ground and I couldn't feel anything below my chest. It was like somebody had stuck a metal slate, just cut my body in half, and the bottom half couldn't feel anything. And I said to the people with me, I think I'm paralyzed. And they said, "Oh, no, no, don't come to the conclusions." And I go, "No, I'm pretty sure I am." But I had an amazing experience at that time. I just felt like God was with me and everything was going to be okay. So that was a very calming, in the middle of all the chaos and all the lights flashing. I just felt a sense of calmness, but it was incredible pain. So I couldn't sit up by myself at all. I couldn't do anything. I was just really completely debilitated. And I was transferred to Burke Rehabilitation Hospital. I was there for 6 months. They told me I'd learn to be totally independent. I thought they were insane. I said, but I'll give it a shot. And I couldn't even sit up. So I couldn't tolerate sitting up. And so they brought in this tilt table, which I used to joke and get me on that I was going to be the bride of Frankenstein. I remember that movie. They slowly tilt me up and I get very, very pale and they'd have to put you back down. I have a poem about that in the book called Bride of Frankenstein. I have a lot of humor in my book because I view the world through the lens of humor sometimes. The only way I can get through, it's like the WD-40 way. But what struck me most was I people started treating me so differently just because I was in a wheelchair. And they would stare at me and talk loudly to me and disregard me. I'd go out to dinner. People would ask my friends, what is she having? I couldn't. So we used to sort of joke around with them. I said, pretend you're deaf and sign back to them, and then they won't know what to do. And we just, I mean, they were just, it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it used to happen quite a bit. Or I couldn't even get into the restaurant or use the bathrooms and then people would finally make accessible bathrooms and then they'd store things in them. And so you couldn't get your wheelchair. And so one time I was with my brother-in-law who actually came down with MS and he used a power chair and we were at this restaurant and I wanted to use the bathroom and they had all the chairs piled in the way. And I said, you need to move these. I can't use the bathroom. And they were very put upon to stop and they took all the chairs away. And I went in and then I left. They put them all back. So I said to Marty, hey, Marty, go tell him you have to use the bathroom too. He didn't have to. So they moved all the chairs and kept it. It's kind of, you could have fun sometimes at making a point. But I when I went back to school, my principal said I couldn't come back to school. They said we can't accommodate me here, and I said you better figure it out. I don't know where that came from. I was a 15-year-old kid sitting around a conference room with the head of the school system and my principal and my parents, and they were trying to figure out how I could get back to school. And I just didn't accept that I was going to be segregated away from my classmates. And so I fought to stay in my school. And one of my classmates met me every morning at the only door that was accessible, brought me to the kitchen elevator, which just reeked of everything, stuffed me in the elevator, disassembled my chair to even fit me in the thing, and then met me up the stairs while I held my nose the whole time. Like, she goes, take a deep breath. And I tried to hold my breath. So we got to the top because this really stunk in there. And then I went on to college. I went to a college nearby, Manhattanville College, and it had I went there the first year, but the bathrooms didn't have access for me to take a shower there. So I had to go home and take a shower. Like people can't even imagine like they'd have to do these things, right? It's just extraordinary. And it was hard to get around the hills and things at the school. So I got a great van though. I had a van that had a lift in it and I could drive right from my wheelchair and it was just so freeing. And everybody's go everywhere with me. It had all these switches. Back then, the guys built them in their garages, you know. I'm sure they didn't need any safety tests. I had this little thing holding my chair onto an armrest. I unfortunately never got in an accident. One time, cops pulled me over. It was so funny. I was coming back from school at night because I ended up commuting from home for the next 3 years. It was too hard to live there. And I'm coming home at night, and the police are pulling. They were like sirening them, and I'm going down this old country road. I'm like, what are they doing to like? What did I do? I haven't been doing anything. And the cop's shining the light in the mirror, and then he sees me in my wheelchair, like driving, like, oh, oh, I'm so sorry, miss. And I said, well, what's going on? He goes, oh, there's a cat burglar out, and he's been driving a van and he's been stealing things. And I said, well, it's not me. So it was pretty funny. But I decided my hometown was not accessible. And I wrote an article. It was a story actually of telling how I couldn't get my brother a gift. Because, you know, when you tell people stories, they listen, but if you lecture, they don't really like to. So you put them in the situation of trying to get a gift, couldn't find parking, couldn't get into the stores. And and they published it. I was so excited. I'm like, I'm going to change the world. And the next week, the Handicap Society wrote a rebuttal. And I was furious. I opened the paper. I'm like, what is this? And my father is always so calm. He says, contact the Human Rights Commission. And here I am. I'm like 20 years old and I'm learning how politics is working. So I contacted them. The Handicap Society said blind people would fall off the curbs, little kids are dangerous. It was just all nonsense. Like, and it didn't even make sense to me why they were writing that. So we got the mayor to come downtown and he tried to get around in a wheelchair and he couldn't get into his office and he couldn't get anywhere. So like 2 months later we curb cut some parking. And this is back in 1978. This is way before the ADA was even passed. So that was really enlightening to me. Like, ooh, you know.
Yeah, the amount of public resistance too, and even now, I mean, you know, a lot of it, I think, um, we were able to say, listen, this is yes, this is for people with disability, wheelchair users, but also, you know, mothers with baby carriages, you know, the curb cuts, things like that, you know. So that's, you know, interesting. So that part of the battle in my town, at least, has been won. However, the maintenance of the sidewalks is terrible. So then they're running and like, how's if you have a wheelchair, how are you supposed to, you know, navigate this?
It's you feel like you're in a war zone going over landmines. I have a line in a poem I'd written, one missed sidewalk craft, I'm a turtle on his back. I mean, because I can't get up, it's dangerous. And people who aren't aware, like one time I was up in Canada and there were leaves on the sidewalk and we were going downhill and I didn't know there was a little right my front wheel caught and I went flying. And they had to take me away in the ambulance. I'm into the hospital. It's like this is not what I want to be doing on my vacation at all.
Well, you started off and you had also starting off getting jobs was not that easy. Um, I want to jump a little bit to though just some of your thoughts about well the challenges of getting jobs, but also just you know debunking some of the stereotypes because I think that well first of all as we started off, you know the notion that somehow you know people with disabilities are you know a minor part of the population when in fact as you've pointed out you know 1 in 4 people have some sort of disability. There are 1.3 billion people in the world with a significant disability. So I mean, the first thing is that it's, you know, I think I heard a line from you that said like, what you want people to know is we're you.
You know, it was funny because I didn't think I was going to get a job. So, but right out of Manhattanville, and I graduated with honors, top of my class. And I think I was top in my class. I had like 2 honors degrees. Um, and I didn't think I was going to get a job, and I accepted this job at the Bank of New York with very little pay, and as an internal bank auditor. That's not really what I wanted to grow up and be. I did that for a year. I learned a lot about banks, which actually helped me later in my career as a lawyer. And then I went to work in a law firm, and I was the employee benefits supervisor. And I think I got that job because my father needed somebody. So, and they made up a job, but took it seriously, and I really helped them with their employee benefits. And then I got accepted to law school and went there. And when I was in law school, I worked at the Justice Department and in DC for a semester, summer. And then I worked in a big law firm, and they didn't hire me back for my after I got out of school. And I went on interviews, and the things people said to me were astounding. Like, what would our clients think if we assigned you to the case? Someone in a wheelchair. And I said, well, one, it's against the law to discriminate against me. But two, they're hiring me for my brain. I mean, I'm not going to be running a marathon. And, I've thought a lot about what it's like living with a disability. Before I even go out the door, I have to plan so much. If I were going to hire somebody today to do planning and they were successful, I would hire someone with a disability because they know how to organize things, plan for events, just the skills that we develop just to survive in this society that's not very friendly to us are pretty amazing, you know.
Yeah, and I think that the assumptions people had, like, can you do this job? And I think that I recall reading that you early on your parents got you a book about a woman who can you do it from a wheelchair,
Oh, yeah.
and that's talk about your humor. The woman is mopping floors, which was not your aspiration, and you joke with a friend, that you want to do a book. You can do it in a wheelchair.
Well, I was, kind of playing on it.
I think people are stunned to when they realize that there are accommodations that enable you to drive yourself, to work, to be fully engaged.
Right. Well, I started 2 law firms. I started a law firm back in 1998, and it was a successful law firm, and it grew. And then I didn't want to be in such a big firm but I was one of the managing partners there, and we hired people and, basic part of the economy. And then I left that job and I started another business again that was successful. So, and people come to me for legal advice all the time, and I help clients through so many difficult situations, and they come to me for advice, and their family comes to me. And I just, why would they think, oh, she can't do that, or she can't do that. And think about that. I mean, I've run businesses, and I wanted disabled people who were very successful. But, I'm not the, I mean, everybody with a disability, like people are different and they have different abilities. And the states all have these programs that help people with disabilities get employed. And we hired somebody in our firm who had think he was autistic, and we hired him to do a job, and he was fantastic. And they sent a coach in, and they got him set up, and then at no charge to us. There's these wonderful programs employers can use to help employ people with disabilities and get them working. And very dedicated employee that we had. He did the job better than anybody else, the job he was hired for. And so the stereotypes come, I think, because there are not a lot of places, or it's getting better, that have access. So you don't see a lot of disabled people interacting. But now I can see on Facebook a lot of disabled people are posting things, and very funny things. Like, there's this one woman who posted this video where she said she goes up to a non-disabled person and says, "Oh, how great you're out and about," because that's what people say to us. Like, "Oh, it's so wonderful to see you out and about." And I'm buying yogurt. I'm like, "Well, what's the big deal about buying yogurt?" It's solving the world. Um, so there's a lot of stereotypes out there that people have, and I hope they're changing and dissolving.
So let's talk a little about the title of your book, which is interesting. How you came up with the title and what the significance is.
Well, recalibrating gravity came from when I was in rehab and I was trying to learn to sit up again, and I don't have my core stomach muscles, and I couldn't, I couldn't sit without support. And my therapist said to me, "You have to learn to find a new center of gravity." And that always stuck with me because gravity has so many meanings. I have a poem, the preface poem in my book is my definition of gravity. And gravity is so many different things. It's like what keeps us together and not floating away. It's the pull of the dog's leash. It's seriousness. Like, that's a very serious situation, people talk about. So gravity is both physical and metaphysical about how it's affecting us. And that's sort of like how we get through life. We're constantly figuring out how to get around in the world. That's these are always feeling heavy, pushing against us. Sometimes they're light. So I thought it was a good metaphor for the life.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's you mentioned that it's the book is more about it's a disability memoir, but also about navigating life, keeping things balanced no matter what happens.
Yes. How do you get through life? Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, you mentioned specifically, how do you how do you live well in spite of all the messiness?
Well, yeah, how do you live well? I think we have to embrace each moment. My mom, at the time that I had my accident, had been in AA for a couple of years. She was a recovering alcoholic, and she taught me the steps of the program. Take it one day at a time. Easy does it. The Serenity Prayer was so helpful. To accept the things you cannot change, change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And there's some things I can't change that fact I'm paralyzed, but I can change how I live being paralyzed, right? I can say, oh, poor me, or I can embrace it and figure out what I can do with my life that way.
The other dimension of the book, which is I wanted to touch on too, is your choice of doing it in verse. Why was that important to you?
Verse is a really interesting medium to tell a story. So, one, I feel like we have very little attention spans today. But we love, so we'll watch a series, and if we like this series, we'll binge watch it. So these poems are like little vignettes of my life in very short, concise pieces. And as people read them, my friends say they just keep turning the page, or other people that have read it. But verse also talks to us in a language, it talks to our soul, our unconscious, and we feel things in verse. And in verse, you can traverse time and space. You can make up different things, just to illustrate points. I use humor. It's such a immediate medium. You just feel things immediately, and that's what I wanted to immerse people in my experience. And I don't think you can do that as well in prose.
It's just interesting to me because I had a couple of years ago I had a guest on um, named Hank Bjorklund, who was a former football player for the New York Jets. I had actually watched him play in college, and then I ran into him that he had a very successful career as an attorney, and then all of a sudden he was struck with some mysterious disease, and they couldn't really diagnose it. They thought, well, maybe this is the result of getting the hits in football, but they never really could quite diagnose it. But and it came and got better and worse and got better, and what he ended up doing is, and I think he's doing today, is he turned to poetry, and for him, he joined a poetry group, and as a poet, he felt that this helped heal him.
It's so true. It's such a healing medium because it's speaking to our inner soul. It's such a wonderful way of expressing things that we can't normally express, and we don't have to spell it out exactly. It was kind of a lead to it.
So I wanted to move on a little bit to, you know, the issue of caregiving for people with disabilities and what you wish people knew about how to care for people. And also, I think there is you have a line about you and your husband about which I found compelling, which is well, that's a whole story about you and your husband, but then there's the one line about um, and you say our relationship was on and off for years until he realized he couldn't live without me. We've been married for 25 years. People think he takes care of me, but really we take care of each other.
We do. We do take care of each other. We both have different skills. Um, and he's gone through some difficult times. He's had been in the hospital and he's had back surgery. He was a big burly kind of guys builder. It's really good when you're disabled and you're a builder because it can go whole life around. He would put ramps in everywhere and made me a huge. We bought a small house and he added on to it, and it's really accessible and it's wonderful. Um, and when I first started going out with him, we go by stairs and he'd say, I bet you think that should be accessible. And I went, well, yeah, of course I do. And builders historically don't like to make things accessible. I go, sure, it should be. And he goes, off. And then a couple months later, went and buy some stairs and he goes, where's the ramp going into this bolt? Because he realized how important it was for the access. But, we complement each other. We have different skills and we just work really well as a team, and we're always talking to each other about things and getting going places. And I do a lot of the planning for our trips and figuring out where we're going. And he, he takes me places like I could have never gone. He's taken me to all places I could never go without him. So,
And you have a poem about that, right? Called "A Brief History of
well,
Forever."
it's our story. If you want me to quickly read.
Yeah, I think we have time. I'd like you to read at least one of your poems to give people
Okay,
a
this is
feel
one
for.
of my favorite poems because I think it kind of breaks, yeah, stereotypes. And it's, a funny story. A brief history of forever. That's humorous in itself. So when we meet in fourth grade at Osborne School, you almost catch me in boys chase girls, then girls chase boys. 2. I sit behind you in homeroom at Rye High because I'm a K and you're an H. In ninth grade, you move out of town, miss me being in an infamous car accident the next year. 3. At Manhattanville, I discover you're in my freshman class, working behind the snack bar. You don't seem to mind me in a wheelchair. You whisk me away to an evening party in Massachusetts while you're manic. You could be my Prince Charming until I never want to see your movie star face again. 4. 9 years later, fresh out of law school, I tell God, I'm ready to get a husband. I bump into you browsing records at Caldors. You take me to the city, melt me by the kiss at the mouth. 5. You keep punctuating, we're not boyfriend, girlfriend. Our bodies punctuate differently until you disappear with my fairy tale dream. 6. I get it. You think you can't handle a forever disability. If I weren't permanently paralyzed, I'd walk away from it too. Let's not mention your diagnoses. 7. In Albuquerque, Tom Petty sings to you, it's wake up time. My phone rings in White Plains, New York. You move across the U.S., overflowing my apartment, intertwining our lives. 8. 5 years engaged, we elope and marry at Sweetheart Rock. While I'm getting beautified, you commit your vows to memory. surprise me as you do for a lifetime with just how much you love me. It's a little snippet of our lives.
So from the sublime of caregiving, let's go to the practicality of some of the
Oh,
issues.
yes. I don't need a lot of care. Um, so I actually was pretty independent until I fell out of my wheelchair and broke my femur bone. And then I got burned, and then I got thyroid cancer. I had like a series of mishaps, but maybe it went the other way around. I can't remember. And I used to say to God, don't I get a hall pass? I mean, can I just live without all these other things people get? But now, um, and then two years ago, I fell out of my wheelchair and I dislocated my right shoulder and I paralyzed this nerve here, and I couldn't move, and I had to have an aide come with me. And so that was eye opening because, yeah, one, hiring someone to come stay at your house is really hard because you have a stranger in your house and you feel very vulnerable. And I had to be picked up with a Hoyer lift, which I don't hate. I don't like Hoyer lifts at all. But so you feel like a sack of potatoes getting raised up and plopped down. And it's hard, and people are pushing you around. And, most people in wheelchairs don't like people touching their chair or moving them. It's really part of your body that you move around with. And you should never touch somebody's wheelchair without them asking. Anyway, so I had to have an aide, and it was incredibly expensive. And it was very hard having someone in my home. And my husband was pretty good about it, but it's like it feels invasive. But a lot of people have. He wasn't in a position where he could take care of me because he was having some back issues. But a lot of people, families help take care of them. My sister, husband had MS, and got very sick, and she took care of him. She did everything for him. She was very loving. And she would go out to places, and her friends would say, oh, why don't you just stick him in a home? Like he was some rack and potatoes. You just stick someone in a home. Like, what is that? But the relationship they have was so loving and caring. And Marty was an incredible person. So, but there are caregivers who make errors. Like the caregiver I had burned my foot and I've been in hospitals where doctors don't keep asking me. There's a poem that you liked in there called Hospital Care, and it's the first poem I ever had published in New Mobility magazine, and they don't even publish poems. And I went to the hospital, and they brought out the Hoyer lift, this lift that they put a sling under you, pick you up, and I was midair, and the battery died, and I'm like floating in midair, and I said to them, well, bring me over to the bed and raise the bed up, and then I can be, then you can get me off of this thing. And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. But they hardly ever used it. And I've been in hospitals where they keep asking me, can't you stand? I don't know. I can't stand. And doctors that have like, because I don't feel, my body feels the pain, even though my brain doesn't. And so I can go into something called autonomic dysreflexia, which is life threatening. And my doctor did surgery on me and brought me back to the dressing room, to the home, and not to recovery. And my blood pressure was spiking, and I could have stroked out. And I said, you need to bring me to the recovery room. And they said, what are you, drug seeking? I said, we just had surgery. My body is reacting. This is a very dangerous thing for me. So they don't know a lot about things that can happen to disabled people. So they're not educated. And so many doctors, when I go somewhere, they say, how did you get here? And I said, well, I drove myself. And they go, you did? Like they don't know I can drive. It's just amazing. Is that what you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, yeah, and also just some of the things that you face and don't think about. I mean, so the hospital, the training is an issue. The other thing is people don't realize things that we don't need but are essential, like wheelchairs, are not. People don't understand them, and about keeping them in good working order and repairing them. You mentioned that. Oh well, wheelchair can take repairs can take months.
They can they can take months. And that's inexcusable, right? Because I can get my car fixed in a day. Why can't I get my wheelchair fixed in a day? They're trying to fight that against, because when you have a repair done needed for your chair, you first have to tell the company diagnoses it, and they send it to your doctor to get a prescription to repair it. Then the prescription goes to your insurance company. Then the insurance company then approves it. And then once they approve it, then the company orders the part. That that's like this ridiculously long process. There's a great guy on that I know, and he said he posted the funniest thing. I went out, I had a part, I ordered it on Amazon, I got it the next day, I installed it. Done. If I'd gone through all that other stuff, it would have taken forever. But of course, everyone can't fix their chair because some people can't even move their arms. But yeah.
So what would you like? What would you like people to think about in terms of a call to action to? And I guess first of all to increase accessibility.
I think when you go out into the world or you're at a meeting, you should look around and say, who's missing at this meeting? If you don't see anybody with a disability, there's something missing. Like you don't have access, you don't have ramps, you don't have sign interpreters, whatever that's needed. And a lot of people, autistic people, like they need special light that's calm and things like that. So say something like, why? Look when I did it. It's 15, 20 years old, and they said, we need curb cuts. And we got them. So if you start advocating for access, and I think everybody should boycott inaccessible places, that will make them change. The ADA has been in, gosh, it was enacted in 36 years ago. It's not a surprise you need to have access. I think that builders should develop homes. There's very few homes I can buy. They should buy homes with access. They should be accessible. We should start doing it from the bottom up and make things accessible from the beginning and not as an afterthought.
Right.
And really advocate for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people are getting more acquainted with universal design, and I think part of that is that there is, again, there's sort of an overlap between issues for people with disabilities and older people who sometimes just have mobility issues, which are very similar. So, they're recognizing that you need to have these sorts of houses that people often now are living with their adult children, and so it makes sense to do it from the very beginning, and it actually it's inexpensive, and of course the money matters. And what they're discovering is that these houses now are selling for higher prices because people recognize eventually that this may be a necessity for them.
Right,
So,
is the age in place. Because,
right.
we've somehow created a whole industry of warehousing the elderly away, elderly people away into these homes where they turn to fortune. And that's not a great place to be. Everybody should be integrated in society.
Right, right. Now, and you're also an attorney, and you deal with helping people plan for their future and their care. Are there any things that are distinctive in terms of planning if you have a disability?
Oh, yes, sure. All right. It depends if you're receiving aid from the government or not, because you can set up special needs trusts, which help you continue to get your benefits from the government, and then also have supplemental funds so that you can get a better haircut or get some decent clothes, because you're not allowed to have very much money when the government is paying for things. And basically everybody is stuck in a poverty level, which why should that be? That should change. Um, and then it's really important to have healthcare proxies so that if something happens to you and somebody else can speak up for you, and power of attorneys for you, and trusts are a really good mechanism for things. So, and parents can set up able accounts, or you can set up your own able account. So there's a ton of different tools that you can use to help you live a better life as a disabled person and still get some benefits from the government. Because it's really expensive to be disabled. It costs a fortune.
Yeah. Wow. So let's some final thoughts here in terms of what would you like to leave people with in terms of what people should know about people with disabilities? But one thing that I found in reading about you was that you point out that um, this is not some new problem. That you point out that the ancient Egyptians integrated disability into their daily lives. So if they can do it,
They did. They did. I mean, disability is just part of being human, right? And somewhere along the line, which I would probably like to study, is what happened. Like, why did we start hiding people away and thinking everybody had to conform to some norm that nobody really can ever be, right? All the airbrushed models and things, nobody looks like that. And it's really unfortunate. So I'd like people to just be kinder to everyone else and think about how the world can be more accessible for everyone else and get to know people, get to know about disabilities and what it's all about and invite people, you know. I'd love to be invited places, even if your place isn't accessible. We could just, you know, ask me, include me, make me, you know, I want to be included. I don't want to be alone in a tower or surrounded by a moat where nobody ever talks to me.
by the way, I have a friend um, who has a website called Destination Accessible, and so it's really great. Basically, just as herself and a few other people are basically put they talk about public places and restaurants, and then they say send me your stories about places that are accessible or not, and she'll describe it, and she'll say, well, okay, this place says they're accessible, but you've got to walk on a gravel parking lot, 100 meters, you know. So, giving people, basically trying in a positive way to basically promote places that are accessible, and also for people if they're going out, it's to know, what if it's really accessible or has chairs piled in front of the bathroom.
Raise an interesting point too, because a lot of people think they're designing things that are accessible, but they don't consult anybody who's disabled, right? There's like nothing without us, you know, don't build anything without us, not talking to us about it. Because you may think it's accessible. There are my town here, they have a ramp at the public park into the bathroom, which is too steep, and right in front of the bathroom there's 2 feet of gravel. Nobody could get there. It's not even the easy gravel, it's a big chunky gravel. So it's like being in quicksand. So yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So, any last thoughts? I do want to mention before we go that you are available for presentations, and you love doing that. And so, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, my website is Neri Keating, Keating, NeriKeatingPoet.com, and there's
Hmm.
a contact there. And you can get information about my book and read some of my poems. Um, and I'd love to hear from people and, you know, get their thoughts and I really would like to leave with people
Hmm.
that this world is that we're all in, it's a wonderful, beautiful world.
Hmm.
And we need to be just kinder to everybody and more loving because love is really the most important thing. It's such
Yeah.
a wonderful way to be is live in love instead of
Hmm. Right.
discord and hate.
Yeah. Well, I did find that really, compelling about your stuff. As I was reading it, I said, "This is a person who is filled, still, in spite of things she's been through, is filled with joy and love and compassion."
Yeah.
And I think that that's, really, as you say, and humor,
Yeah.
which helps us get through life. And there's so much that you can be cynical about, and that you've really been able to um, recalibrate gravity.
Yeah. It's really I just find this world incredible. And I think that people too, when they go through something really hard or something happens, you just have to learn to just take a breath. It's going to take time to recover
Hmm.
and or just figure out what to do. You don't have to do it immediately. Just
Hmm.
be kind to yourself
Right.
and just do yourself some time to figure it all out because it's not easy.
Right.
And be patient because
Right.
sometimes it's
Patient.
not easy to be patient. And I'm a little tired of all constantly advocating and, why isn't this place accessible? But when it is, when I can go places and go shopping and work without barriers, I'm
Mm-hmm.
unstoppable. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Right.
And
Right.
I hope that everybody really start to advocating for access and writing their Congress and telling them that the new stance of the Justice Department to not support disability immigration is wrong and they need to change that.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, again, it's been a real pleasure. I hope we catch up again soon. I found it very enjoyable and enlightening. And so, until our next time, thanks very much.
Thank you for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it.